My name is Amber, and I'm 26 years old. When I opened that credit card to cover my mom's cancer treatments, I thought I was being the responsible daughter she'd raised me to be. How was I supposed to know that while I was drowning in debt, my sister Rachel was sunbathing in the Bahamas with her secret boyfriend? The photos I discovered broke more than my heart. They shattered our entire family. Before I get into how my entire family fell apart, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned this disaster into the wake-up call that finally set me free. Growing up, my mom Diane always told me and my younger sister Rachel that we were a team. The Three Musketeers, she'd say, wrapping her arms around our shoulders and pulling us close. Dad had left when Rachel was just 2, and Mom never remarried. Instead, she poured everything into raising us, working 2 jobs to keep us in a decent school district and make sure we never felt the absence of a father figure too keenly. I took after Mom, practical, responsible, always planning ahead. Rachel was different. 2 years younger at 24, she was beautiful, spontaneous, and charming. While I saved my allowance, Rachel spent hers before she even got it. While I worked part-time jobs through high school and college, Rachel pursued modeling gigs and partied with photographers who promised to make her famous. Mom never played favorites, but I knew she relied on me more. Amber always knows what to do, Mom would say proudly when bill collectors called or when the car broke down again. I'd step in, negotiate payment plans, research affordable mechanics, and handle whatever crisis had emerged. Rachel would give Mom hugs and make her laugh, which was valuable too, I supposed. We had different roles in the family ecosystem. After college, I took a job as an administrative assistant at Patterson Marketing. The pay wasn't great, $42,000 a year in a city where rent ate half my paycheck, but it was stable with health benefits. I had dreams of eventually moving into account management, but for now, I was grateful for the security. Rachel, meanwhile, had started getting regular modeling work, nothing spectacular, mostly local department store catalogs and websites, but her Instagram following was growing, and she talked constantly about big opportunities just around the corner. Then came that terrible Tuesday in March. Mom called me at work, her voice shaking. The doctor found something, she said. They want to do more tests. The something was stage 3 breast cancer that had already spread to her lymph nodes. The oncologist, Dr. Thompson, didn't sugarcoat it. Mom needed aggressive treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and she needed it immediately. What about insurance? I asked, already calculating costs in my head. Mom's face fell. She'd been between jobs for 3 months after the dental office where she'd worked for 15 years had closed. Her new position at a medical billing company offered insurance, but there was a 90-day waiting period. She'd been just 2 weeks away from coverage when she got the diagnosis. State assistance might cover some basics, the hospital financial counselor explained, but the specific treatment protocol Dr. Thompson is recommending includes newer medications and therapies that aren't fully covered. That evening, I called a family meeting at Mom's small 2-bedroom house. I'd made spreadsheets of costs, treatment options, and potential resources. Mom sat quietly at the kitchen table, still in shock, fingers tracing the wood grain patterns. We need to come up with around $75,000, I explained, showing them the estimates. And that's assuming everything goes perfectly with no complications. Jesus, Rachel whispered, her perfect makeup not quite hiding how pale she'd become. That's insane. Well, that's American healthcare, I replied flatly. I've got about $12,000 in savings. Mom has around $8,000. That leaves us with a $55,000 gap to fill. I turned to Rachel expectantly. Her modeling career had picked up recently. She'd moved from her studio apartment to a nicer 1-bedroom and had bought a used BMW a few months back. She squirmed under my gaze. I'm not liquid right now, she stammered. Everything I make goes back into my career portfolio, shoots, networking events, the right clothes. You know how it is, I'm still building. Mom reached over and patted Rachel's hand. It's okay, sweetheart. Nobody expects you to solve this, but I did. I absolutely did expect her to help. I saw the designer handbags, the shoes, the weekends away with friends she documented endlessly on social media. Rachel must have seen my expression because she quickly added, I can pick up some extra promotional gigs, maybe a few hundred here and there. That would be wonderful, honey, Mom said, but I just nodded stiffly and turned back to my spreadsheets. The truth was, I had always been the family fixer. When the electricity got shut off during my sophomore year of high school, I was the one who negotiated with the power company and picked up a weekend job to help catch up on bills. When Rachel needed bail money after a misunderstanding at a club when she was 20, I withdrew from my textbook fund and skipped meals for a month to rebuild my savings. This was just one more crisis for Amber to handle, except this time, Mom's life hung in the balance. Before we left that night, I hugged Mom tightly, feeling how thin she'd become already. "We're going to figure this out," I promised her. "The Three Musketeers, right?" Mom smiled weakly. "All for one," she whispered. "And one for all," I finished, glancing meaningfully at Rachel, who was already absorbed in her phone, flying across the screen. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began researching every possible financial avenue. I applied for assistance programs, researched medical loans, and investigated crowdfunding options. Most of the assistance programs had long waiting lists or Mom didn't qualify. Medical loans required better credit than either of us had. Crowdfunding might bring in a few thousand, but nothing close to what we needed, and Mom was intensely private about her problems. I scheduled a meeting with Frank, the hospital's financial counselor, a balding man with kind eyes and a worn leather portfolio that had seen countless similar conversations. "The problem," Frank explained gently, "is that the most effective treatment protocol for your mother's specific cancer includes some newer medications that aren't fully covered by assistance programs. We can certainly go with standard protocols that would be more affordable, but..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Standard protocols meant lower survival rates. "What about payment plans?" I asked. "The hospital can offer a plan, but it requires a substantial down payment and monthly payments that would still be around $1,500. Could your family manage that?" My throat tightened. My entire monthly budget after rent, utilities, and student loans was barely $1,200. When I left Frank's office, I had a stack of pamphlets but no solution. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage, calculating and recalculating numbers that refused to add up differently. I tried applying for a personal loan, but my debt-to-income ratio wasn't favorable enough. Rachel's credit was even worse. She'd maxed out credit cards in college and had a history of late payments. That's when the credit card offer arrived in my mail. I'd received plenty before and always shredded them immediately, but this one caught my attention, pre-approved for $60,000 credit limit. The interest rate was astronomical, 24.99%, but the limit would cover most of Mom's treatment costs. I called Brooke, my best friend since middle school. "This is insane, right? I can't possibly take this card." "Absolutely insane," Brooke confirmed. "Amber, the interest alone would be..." She paused, calculating. "Over $1,200 a month if you maxed it out. That's like taking on a second rent payment." "But what choice do I have?" I asked, my voice breaking. "It's my mom, Brooke. There have to be other options." "What about Rachel? She's always posting about these fancy modeling gigs. She claims everything goes back into her career." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "What about a second job, or selling your car? Or..." "I've thought of all that. A second job would bring in what, $1,000 a month? Mom needs treatment now, not in 6 years when I've saved enough." The next day at work, I mentioned my dilemma to Jason, a coworker in the legal department. Unlike Brooke, who saw everything in black and white, Jason occupied the gray areas. "Have you checked if the hospital has a charity care program?" he asked. "Most nonprofits are required to provide a certain amount of free or reduced cost care." I hadn't heard of this. "How would I qualify?" "Your mom might not qualify based on her income alone, but if you consider her medical hardship, it's worth investigating." I made a note to ask Frank about this, but in the meantime, the clock was ticking. Dr. Thompson had emphasized that every week of delay reduced Mom's chances. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table with the credit card application in front of me. The fine print seemed to blur before my eyes. Penalty rates, cash advance fees, balance transfer options, all designed to extract maximum profit from desperation. I finger hovered over the "Accept Online Now" button on my laptop. One click would give me the means to save Mom, but potentially ruin my financial future for decades to come. I thought about my mother's face when I was 7 and had fallen off my bike, scraping my knee badly. She carried me 3 blocks home, whispering reassurances, then cleaned and bandaged the wound with such gentle care. I thought about how she'd worked overtime for months to buy me a proper prom dress when I was nominated for prom court my senior year. I thought about the countless times she'd sacrificed for Rachel and me without complaint. I clicked the button. 3 days later, a shiny new credit card arrived in my mailbox. The same day, I called the hospital and scheduled Mom's first treatment. When I showed her the appointment confirmation, she burst into tears. I can't let you do this, she protested weakly. Amber, the debt is just money I finished for her. We'll figure it out later. Right now, getting you better is all that matters. She hugged me tightly, and over her shoulder, I noticed Rachel was absent. Again, she'd promised to be there for this moment. Where's Rachel? I asked as Mom released me. Oh, she texted that she had a last-minute booking, Mom replied. Some kind of swimwear shoot. She said it pays really well, so that's good news, right? I nodded and forced a smile. Right, that's great. The first payment to the hospital hit my new credit card like a sledgehammer. $12,876 for initial consultations, pre-surgical testing, and the first round of medications. I stared at the online statement, the reality of my decision finally sinking in. The minimum monthly payment alone was $322, and that would barely touch the principal. Mom's surgery was scheduled for the following week. I'd taken time off work to help her prepare and recover, which meant my next paycheck would be lighter too. I created a strict budget, cutting out everything non-essential. No more coffee shops, no more occasional takeout, no more small indulgences that had made my demanding job bearable. Meanwhile, Rachel seemed to be living in a different universe. She showed up at Mom's house wearing new Gucci sunglasses and carrying a Louis Vuitton handbag I was certain cost more than a month of my salary. Seriously, I hissed when Mom was in the bathroom. You couldn't help with Mom's treatment, but you can buy designer accessories. Rachel rolled her eyes. It's not what you think. These are loans from designers for my Instagram. I have to maintain my image to get work, Amber. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had taken root. On the morning of Mom's surgery, Rachel texted that she couldn't make it. Emergency reshoot. Client unhappy with yesterday's photos. So sorry, tell Mom I love her and I'll visit tomorrow. Mom tried to hide her disappointment. It's her career, she said weakly as a nurse prepped her for surgery. We have to support her dreams. I bit my tongue and squeezed Mom's hand as they wheeled her into the operating room. The surgery took 6 hours. I sat alone in the waiting room, checking my phone periodically. No messages from Rachel, but her Instagram showed she'd posted 3 new photos that morning, professional quality shots of her at sunrise on a beach, laughing in a bikini, the water sparkling behind her. The geotag was turned off, but it certainly didn't look like any reshoot in our city. When Dr. Thompson finally emerged to tell me the surgery had been successful, I was so overwhelmed with relief that I temporarily forgot my suspicions about Rachel. Mom needed to stay in the hospital for 3 days. I slept in a chair beside her bed, working remotely when she napped, and coordinating with her medical team. Rachel never showed up, though she sent elaborate flower arrangements twice with cards saying she was swamped with work, but thinking of you constantly. When Mom came home, I moved temporarily into her spare bedroom to care for her. Rachel visited briefly, snapping selfies with Mom for her social media with captions about family first and being there for each other, then disappeared again, claiming she had meetings with potential agents. As Mom slowly recovered, I returned to work but spent evenings and weekends at her house, cooking healthy meals, managing her medications, and driving her to follow-up appointments. The credit card balance grew with each treatment, $24,532, $37,908, $46,271. I started picking up overtime whenever possible, working through lunches and staying late. My boss noticed my exhaustion but was sympathetic when I explained the situation. Still, company policy limited how much overtime I could take. One evening, while doing laundry at Mom's house, I found a receipt that had fallen from Rachel's jacket pocket for a luxury hotel in Miami, dated during the week of Mom's surgery. The total was over $1,200 for 2 nights. My hands shook as I held the paper. This wasn't a misunderstanding or bad timing. Rachel had deliberately lied about why she missed Mom's surgery. And I confronted her by phone. Rachel became defensive. Are you spying on me now? Going through my things. I was doing your laundry because you left it here and promised Mom you'd come back for dinner, I said, trying to keep my voice level. The receipt fell out of your pocket. It was a work trip. Last-minute opportunity. I was going to tell you both, but, during Mom's surgery, a work trip you never mentioned. When you texted specifically about a reshoot, you don't understand how this industry works, Rachel snapped. Sometimes you have to drop everything for the right opportunity. Even when your mother is having cancer surgery, my voice broke. There was a pause. Look, we can't all put our lives on hold. You chose to handle things your way, I'm handling them mine. The call ended with nothing resolved. When I mentioned the incident to Mom, trying to be gentle, she became agitated. Rachel's always been different, she defended. She's just coping the only way she knows how. Please try to understand, Amber. I can't bear to have you two fighting while I'm going through this. I swallowed my frustration and nodded. I just want her to help more, I said softly. It's a lot to handle alone. I know, sweetheart, Mom sighed. Rachel will come around in her own time. She always does, but as weeks passed, Rachel's behavior became increasingly suspicious. She'd arrive for brief visits wearing new clothes and talking about industry connections, yet whenever I asked directly about her work or income, she'd become evasive. One afternoon, while helping Mom into the bathroom, I noticed Rachel's purse on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, moral qualms battling with growing suspicion. Suspicion 1. I quickly looked through her wallet and found another hotel receipt, this time for the Ritz-Carlton in the Bahamas, dated just 3 days prior. That evening, I called Brooke in tears. I think Rachel is lying about everything, I said. She's taking luxury vacations while I'm working overtime and going into massive debt for Mom's treatments. Have you checked her social media? Brooke suggested. Not just what she posts publicly, but tagged photos or mentions by others. She's careful about tagging, I explain. Her public profile is all professional shots and inspirational quotes. What about her followers or people she follows? Maybe there are clues there. It wasn't a bad idea. When we hung up, I logged into Instagram, something I rarely had time for these days. Rachel had over 15,000 followers, and her feed was indeed a carefully curated collection of professional photos, behind-the-scenes modeling shots, and aesthetic lifestyle content. Nothing suspicious on the surface, but as I scrolled through her followers, one account caught my eye, at Trevor James Photography. The profile picture showed a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and an expensive camera. His bio read, "Capturing beauty in all its forms. Private photography sessions available for select clients." Something about his page made me uneasy. I clicked through his photos, mostly landscapes and architectural shots, but occasionally women in various settings, always beautiful, always photographed with obvious technical skill, but also a certain intimacy that seemed more personal than professional. Rachel appeared in several photos, though never tagged. In these images, she looked different, somehow more relaxed, less posed, laughing genuinely rather than the practiced smile she used in her professional shot. As I continued scrolling, a sick feeling grew in my stomach. I wasn't sure what I was looking at exactly, but something felt wrong, very wrong. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone, a direct message on Instagram. Half asleep, I opened it, expecting a spam message or perhaps a note from an old acquaintance. Instead, I found myself looking at a message from at Trevor James Photography. "Hey Rachel. Finally got those Bahamas shots edited. You look absolutely stunning as always. Trevor says hi and can't wait for our next adventure. Here are a few previews." The message wasn't meant for me. He had confused my account with Rachel's, likely because our usernames were similar. Mine was at Amber L. Wilson, hers at Rachel L. Wilson. With trembling fingers, I scrolled through the attached photos. There was Rachel, radiant in a white bikini on pristine beaches, lounging by infinity pools, and sipping champagne on a private yacht. But she wasn't alone. In several photos, she was wrapped in the arms of a man who appeared to be in his early 50s, handsome in that distinguished way of wealthy older men, with the same salt and pepper hair as the profile picture. The timestamp on the photos showed they were taken exactly when Mom was undergoing her surgery. I felt physically ill. All the pieces suddenly fit together: the expensive accessories, the mysterious absences, the evasive answers about her income. Rachel hadn't been building her modeling career. She'd been dating a wealthy older man and living a secret luxury lifestyle, while I drained my savings and went into crippling debt for our mother's cancer treatment. I continued scrolling through the messages above the one mistakenly sent to me. Trevor and Rachel had been exchanging messages for months. In one, Trevor mentioned helping with her financial situation and having paid off her $20,000 credit card debt as a birthday surprise. $20,000. Rachel had been in debt, and rather than using this windfall to help with Mom's treatment, she kept it secret and continued her lavish lifestyle. The final photo in the set showed Rachel laughing on the deck of a yacht, champagne glass raised, with the caption, "Here's to sugar daddies who solve all life's problems." I dropped the phone like it had burned me. The room seemed to spin as rage, hurt, and betrayal crashed over me in waves. All those nights I'd lain awake worrying about debt, all the overtime hours I'd worked while running on fumes, All the times I'd held Mom's hand through painful treatments and Rachel had been living in luxury, accepting expensive gifts and having her debts paid while contributing nothing to the family crisis. With shaking hands, I took screenshots of everything, then forwarded the messages to my own email for safekeeping. I needed proof before confronting her, knowing how easily Rachel could lie her way out of situations. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did even when actually ill. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets and client emails while my world was imploding. Instead, I drove to Mom's house, rehearsing what I would say when Rachel inevitably showed up for her weekly brief appearance. Mom was napping when I arrived, exhausted from her latest round of chemotherapy. I sat at the kitchen table, screenshots spread before me, waiting. Rachel arrived around 4, breezily entering with a small gift bag and a practiced smile. "Hey, I brought Mom those herbal teas she liked. How's she doing today?" I stared at her, really seeing her for the first time in months. Her hair was freshly highlighted, her manicure perfect, her casual outfit carefully selected designer pieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "She's resting," I said flatly. "Rough week with the chemo." "Poor thing," Rachel sighed, setting down the gift bag. "At least she has you taking such good care of her." "Yeah," I agreed coldly. "At least she has one daughter who cares." Rachel's smile faltered slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" Wordlessly, I slid my phone across the table, open to the screenshots of her Bahamas photos with Trevor. The color drained from Rachel's face. "Where did you get those?" she whispered. "Trevor sent them to me by mistake," I explained, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "He got our Instagram accounts confused." "Funny how similar our usernames are, right?" Rachel grabbed the phone, scrolling frantically through the images. "This isn't you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut her off. "I understand that while I've been working myself to exhaustion and going $50,000 into debt to pay for Mom's cancer treatments, you've been jet-setting with your sugar daddy." "Don't call him that," Rachel snapped, her embarrassment quickly shifting to defensiveness. "Trevor and I have a real relationship. He's just successful and likes to share his lifestyle with me." "A real relationship," I repeated incredulously. "Is that why you kept it secret? Is that why you lied about where you were during Mom's surgery?" "Because it's so real and legitimate." Rachel's expression hardened. "You don't get to judge my choices, when your choices affect our dying mother." "Yes, I absolutely get to judge." I was shouting now, months of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "He paid off your $20,000 credit card debt. $20,000 that could have gone to Mom's treatment, but instead, you kept it secret and let me shoulder everything." "That was a gift," Rachel yelled back. "For my birthday. What was I supposed to do? Tell him no thanks, give it to my sister instead?" "Yes, that's exactly what you should have done. Or at least contributed something to Mom's care instead of buying designer clothes and taking luxury vacations." Rachel's face contorted with rage and something else, guilt, perhaps, finally breaking through. "Mom's always liked you better anyway," she spat. "Perfect Amber, so responsible, so selfless. You've always loved playing the martyr." "Playing the martyr?" I was incredulous. "I'm destroying my financial future to keep our mother alive while you're living it up with a man old enough to be your father." "At least I have a life," Rachel shot back. "You can afford to help Mom because you have nothing else going on, no relationship, no social life, just work and responsibility. I have a career to build, connections to make." "Some career," I scoffed. "Is that what they call it these days?" Rachel lunged forward as if to slap me, then caught herself. We both froze, shocked at how quickly things had escalated. Then, a small voice from the hallway. "Girls." We turned to see Mom standing in the doorway, pale and fragile in her robe, one hand clutching the wall for support. The look on her face told us she'd heard everything. "Mom," Rachel began, "it's not what it sounds like." Mom held up a trembling hand to silence her. "I heard enough." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like a knife. "Rachel, is this true? You've been lying about where you were during my surgery." Rachel seemed to shrink before our eyes, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "I meant to be there, but there was this opportunity, to vacation with your boyfriend while I was under anesthesia." Mom's voice broke, tears filling her eye. "And Amber has been paying for my treatments alone," she offered. Rachel protested weakly. "And I've been building my career so I can help later. By having an older man pay off your debts," Mom asked, each word heavy with disappointment. "You don't understand." Rachel's voice rose again, desperation evident. "Trevor cares about me. He's going to help launch my career. I was going to pay Amber back once I made it big." Mom slowly shook her head, tears now streaming down her cheeks. The daughter I raised would never abandon her family in a crisis for a luxury vacation. The daughter I raised would understand sacrifice and responsibility. I'm that daughter, Rachel cried, moving toward Mom. I handle things differently than Amber. Not everyone can be perfect like her. This isn't about being perfect, Mom whispered. This is about basic decency. Rachel's face flushed deep red. She looked from Mom to me, then back again, seeming to realize she was losing ground rapidly. Fine. Judge me all you want. I'm not apologizing for having a life while you two wallow in misery and medical debt. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Call me when you're ready to stop making me the villain in your sob story. The door slammed behind her with such force that several family photos fell from the wall, frames cracking as they hit the floor. A fitting metaphor for our family in that moment. Mom swayed suddenly, and I rushed to her side just as her knees buckled. Mom, I cried, easing her to the floor. Her skin was clammy, her breathing rapid. I'm calling an ambulance, I said, already reaching for my phone. No, she protested weakly, I just need to sit down. The stress, but her eyes rolled back, and I was already dialing 911, my heart pounding with a new kind of terror. My mother, I told the dispatcher, voice breaking, she has cancer, she just collapsed. Please hurry. As we waited for the ambulance, I held Mom's hand, willing her to stay with me, consumed by the horrible thought that this confrontation, this ugly truth about our fractured family might be what finally broke her. The emergency room was coldly efficient. Nurses whisked Mom away for tests while I filled out paperwork, my hand shaking so badly I could barely write. The waiting room buzzed with fluorescent lights and quiet misery as other families huddled in similar states of anxiety. 3 hours later, Dr. Thompson found me staring blankly at a muted TV in the corner. Miss Wilson, she said gently, sitting beside me, your mother is stable. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. What happened? The combination of her weakened state from chemotherapy and what appears to have been extreme emotional distress triggered a vasovagal response. Essentially, her blood pressure dropped suddenly, causing her to faint, Dr. Thompson explained. We're also seeing some concerning inflammation markers that suggest her body is under significant stress. The doctor's eyes were kind but serious. I understand your family is going through a difficult time financially with these treatments. Is there also emotional stress in the home? I laughed bitterly, then covered my mouth, ashamed. You could say that. My sister and I just had a massive fight about her lack of contribution to Mom's care. Mom overheard everything. Dr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. Cancer treatment isn't just about medication and surgery. The patient's emotional well-being plays a crucial role in recovery. Studies show that high stress levels can significantly impact treatment efficacy. The implication was clear. Our family drama could literally be killing Mom. Can I see her? I asked. She's resting now, but yes, in about 30 minutes. We'd like to keep her overnight for observation. After the doctor left, I tried calling Rachel repeatedly. The call went straight to voicemail. I finally sent a text. Mom's in the hospital. Collapsed after you left. They're keeping her overnight for observation. She's stable now. No response. When I was finally allowed into Mom's room, the sight of her small form in the hospital bed broke something inside me. She looked diminished somehow, tubes and wires connecting her to various machines, her skin nearly as white as the sheets. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. Amber, she whispered. I'm here, Mom, I said, taking her hand gently. How are you feeling? Foolish, she replied with a weak smile. Making such a scene. Don't, I said firmly. This isn't your fault. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Where did I go wrong with Rachel? How did I raise two daughters so differently? You didn't do anything wrong, I assured her, though the same questions had been haunting me. Rachel makes her own choices. I always thought her spirit was just, free, independent. Mom's voice trembled. I never imagined she could be so selfish. Try not to think about it now, I urged. The doctor says stress is bad for your recovery. Mom squeezed my hand weakly. Have you heard from her? I hesitated, then shook my head. I've tried calling. Mom closed her eyes, fresh tears escaping. My girls, she whispered. My girls were supposed to have each other when I'm gone. The words sent ice through my veins. You're not going anywhere, I said fiercely. We're fighting this, remember. But Mom had drifted back to sleep, the emotional exhaustion claiming her again. I stayed by her side all night, dozing uncomfortably in the hospital chair, waking at each beep of the monitors or movement from the nurses. Rachel never called or texted back. The next morning, Mom was released with strict instructions to avoid stress and rest completely. I took another day off work, knowing my boss's patience was wearing thin despite his sympathy. We returned to Mom's house to find Rachel's car in the driveway. I stomach-gnawed with dread and anger as I helped Mom inside. Rachel was in the living room, packing books and framed photos into a cardboard box. She looked up when we entered, her face a carefully composed mask. "You're back," she said flatly. "No thanks to you," I replied, helping Mom to her favorite armchair. "Did you get my messages?" "Yes." The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken accusations. "Rachel," Mom finally said, her voice stronger than I expected. "What are you doing?" Rachel gestured to the box. "Getting my things. I'm moving in with Trevor for a while." "Trevor," I repeated, unable to keep the disgust from my voice. "Of course," Rachel's eyes flashed. "Don't start again, Amber. I came when Mom wasn't here for a reason. I'm not looking for another fight." "So you're just leaving? Running away from the mess you helped create?" "I'm removing myself from a toxic situation," Rachel said coolly, using the practiced language of someone who has reframed their selfishness as self-care. "I can't help anyone if my own mental health is suffering." I laughed incredulously. "Mental health?" Mom collapsed because of our fight. "She's literally being told that stress could kill her, and you're worried about your mental health. Stop it, both of you," Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I can't take any more of this." Rachel looked at Mom for a long moment, something like regret flickering across her face before her expression hardened again. "I'm sorry you got caught in the middle, Mom. That was never my intention." "Your intention," I said bitterly, "was to live your best life while Mom fought cancer and I went into debt. Your intention was to lie and keep secrets from the people who have always supported you." "You don't know anything about my life or my relationship," Rachel snapped. "Trevor loves me. He understands me in ways my family clearly doesn't." "Does he understand that you abandoned your mother during cancer surgery to vacation with him?" I asked. "Does he know what kind of person does that?" Rachel grabbed her box and headed for the door. "I'm not discussing this with you anymore." "Mom, I love you. I'll visit when things calm down." "Rachel, please," Mom called after her, struggling to rise from her chair. "Don't leave like this. We can talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Rachel said firmly. "Amber has made up her mind about me, and you've clearly chosen her side, as always." "That's not fair," Mom protested weakly. "Life isn't fair," Rachel replied, echoing the phrase Mom had repeated throughout our childhood. "Isn't that what you always taught us?" With that parting shot, she was gone. The sound of her car starting and pulling away seemed abnormally loud in the silence she left behind. Mom collapsed back into her chair, her face crumpling. "She's gone," she whispered. "My baby is gone." I knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "She'll cool off, Mom, she always does." But we both knew this was different. Something fundamental had broken in our family, and neither of us knew if it could ever be repaired. As I helped Mom to bed later that evening, she seemed to have aged years in a single day. The cancer was consuming her body, but this family fracture was consuming her spirit. "Promise me something," she said as I adjusted her pillows. "Anything. Promise you'll try to forgive Rachel someday." I hesitated, the request like ash in my mouth. "Mom, promise me," she insisted, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "Hate is too heavy a burden to carry, Amber. Especially for someone you once loved." I swallowed hard, unable to refuse her anything in that moment. "I'll try," I whispered. "That's all I can promise right now. I'll try." It was enough for her. She closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her cheek as sleep finally claimed her. I sat beside her bed long after she'd fallen asleep, wondering how our family had shattered so completely, and whether any of us would ever truly recover from the aftermath of this storm. Days passed with no word from Rachel. Her social media went quiet, no new posts, no stories, no updates. Either she was taking a break from public life, or she'd blocked me from seeing her content. I wasn't sure which would hurt Mom more. Mom's condition stabilized somewhat, but the emotional toll was evident. She'd always been strong, resilient, the cornerstone of our small family. Now she seemed diminished, a shadow of herself that went beyond the physical effects of chemotherapy. "Has Rachel called?" became her daily question, hope flickering briefly in her eyes before I had to extinguish it with another "no." Meanwhile, the financial situation grew increasingly dire. The credit card statement arrived, and I stared in horror at the balance. $52,487.39. The minimum payment had increased to $1,048.75, nearly half my monthly take-home pay. The interest charges alone were over $1,200. I sat at my kitchen table with spreadsheets and calculators, running the numbers over and over, hoping for a different result. At this rate, even making more than the minimum payment, it would take me 15 years to pay off the debt. 15 years of financial servitude for a decision I'd made in desperation. Work provided no escape. My boss, Mark, called me into his office one Monday morning, his expression grave. "Amber, I want you to know how much we value your contributions," he began, immediately sending my anxiety spiraling. No good conversation ever started this way. "The company is implementing some cost-cutting measures," he continued. "We're not in a position to offer raises this year, and we're actually having to reduce hours for some positions." My heart sank, including mine. Mark nodded apologetically. "We can keep you full-time, but the overtime you've been counting on won't be available for the foreseeable future." "I'm sorry." I nodded numbly, thanked him for the transparency, and returned to my desk, fighting back tears. Without overtime, I'd lose about $600 monthly, money I desperately needed for Mom's ongoing treatments and the crushing credit card payments. That same afternoon, I received an email from my landlord. The apartment building had been sold, and the new owners were raising the rent by $300 when my lease renewed in 2 months. It felt like the universe was conspiring against me, closing doors and raising barriers at every turn. When I arrived at Mom's house that evening, another blow awaited. Dr. Thompson had called with Mom's latest test results. The cancer was showing resistance to the current treatment protocol. They needed to adjust her medications and possibly consider more aggressive options. "Did she mention costs?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom avoided my eyes. "Another $15,000, approximately. $15,000 more dollars I didn't have, couldn't borrow, I had no way of obtaining." That night, after Mom went to sleep, I sat in her darkened kitchen and allowed myself to cry for the first time in weeks. Silent, shoulder-shaking sobs that left me gasping for air. I was drowning in debt, in responsibility, in grief for the family we'd lost and the future that seemed increasingly bleak. I thought about Rachel, living with her wealthy boyfriend, free of these burdens. The contrast was so stark it was almost comical. 2 sisters raised by the same mother, now living in completely different realities. Depression settled over me in the following weeks, a heavy fog that made even simple tasks require monumental effort. I went to work, cared for Mom, paid bills, and moved through life on autopilot, feeling increasingly disconnected from the world around me. Friends stopped calling after I canceled plans repeatedly. Brooke tried to reach out, but I found myself avoiding even her, ashamed of how thoroughly my life had fallen apart. Mom noticed, of course. Despite her own struggles, she watched me with worried eyes. "You need to take care of yourself too, sweetheart," she urged one evening as I mechanically prepared her medications. "Maybe take a weekend for yourself." Brooke would stay with me. I shook my head. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was coming apart at the seams, held together only by routine and necessity. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I'd stopped for gas on the way to Mom's house, sliding my credit card into the pump with the resigned knowledge that I was adding to my mountain of debt. The card was decline. I tried again, decline. With shaking hands, I checked my banking app. My checking account showed $42.17 remaining until payday, 3 days away. The credit card was maxed out. I had no way to buy gas to get to Mom's house, let alone anywhere else. I sat in my car in the gas station parking lot as rain pounded the roof, and finally broke down completely. Ugly, howling sobs that I couldn't contain, didn't try to muffle. I was 26 years old with crushing debt, a dying mother, an absent sister, and not even enough money to fill my gas tank. Through my tears, I called Mom to tell her I wouldn't make it tonight. Her disappointed "oh" gutted me, but I couldn't explain the true reason. She had enough burdens without adding my financial collapse to the list. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text notification. "Rachel. Need to pick up rest of my things tomorrow. Will Mom be home or at treatment?" No asking how Mom was doing. No acknowledgement of the weeks of silence. Just practical logistics for her final extraction for our family. I didn't respond. That night, I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling as anxiety gnawed at my insides. What would happen when I couldn't pay the rent increase? When the credit card company started calling about missed payments? When Mom needed more treatments I couldn't afford? Around 2 a.m., my phone rang the hospital. My heart nearly stopped. "Miss Wilson. This is Night Nurse Jenkins from Memorial. Your mother has been admitted with a high fever. The doctor is concerned about infection given her compromised immune system from chemotherapy." I sat up, fully alert now. "Is she stable for now?" but we'd like you to come in if possible. Infections can escalate quickly in cancer patients. I looked at my gas gauge, hovering just above empty, and made a decision. I'll be there as soon as I can. I scrounged through my apartment, finding enough change to put maybe a gallon of gas in my car, just enough to get to the hospital. As I drove through the empty streets, a strange calm settled over me. I had reached rock bottom. There was nowhere to go but up, or to surrender completely. Whatever happened next would determine the course of my life and possibly my mother's as well. The hospital waiting room at 3 a.m. was liminal space, existing somewhere between nightmare and reality. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everyone in a sickly pallor. A few other haunted-looking family members occupied chairs scattered throughout the room, all of us united in our separate vigils. Dr. Thompson found me huddled in a corner chair, staring at a muted TV playing infomercials. "Amber," she said gently, sitting beside me, "your mother is responding well to antibiotics. We caught the infection early, which is fortunate. When can I see her?" I asked. "Soon, she's resting now." Dr. Thompson studied my face. "But I'm concerned about you as well. You look exhausted." The simple acknowledgement of my state broke something loose inside me. Before I could stop myself, I was telling this near stranger everything: the crushing debt, Rachel's betrayal, my maxed out credit cards, and the overwhelming fear that I couldn't keep my mother alive because I simply couldn't afford to. Dr. Thompson listened without interruption, her expression compassionate but unreadable. When I finally ran out of words, she squeezed my hand. "Amber, there are resources you may not be aware of. Have you spoken with Maria Rodriguez in our financial services department?" I nodded. "Frank from financial services helped us initially, but Frank deals with initial assessments. Maria works specifically with hardship cases and our charity care program. I'd like to connect you with her." A flicker of hope, so small it was barely perceptible, sparked within me. Charity care. As a nonprofit hospital, we're required to provide a certain amount of free or reduced cost care to patients who qualify. Your mother's situation, both medical and financial, may meet the criteria. That tiny spark grew slightly brighter. When Mom was discharged the following day, I had an appointment scheduled with Maria Rodriguez. Before leaving, Dr. Thompson handed me a card. "This is for you," she said quietly. "A support group for FANG caregivers. You're carrying an impossible load alone, Amber. Let others help bear the weight." I slipped the card into my pocket, neither committing nor refusing. Maria Rodriguez was nothing like I expected. Rather than the sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful hospital bureaucrats I'd encountered before, Maria was a force of nature, efficient, knowledgeable, and fiercely determined to find solutions. "The system is designed to be confusing," she explained as she reviewed our case. "It keeps people from accessing the help they're entitled to. My job is to cut through the bullshit." For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile tugging at my lips. Maria helped me complete applications for the hospital's charity care program and several external assistance programs I hadn't known existed. She reviewed Mom's treatment protocol and identified several medications that could be obtained through pharmaceutical assistance program. "Based on your mother's medical situation and your financial documentation, I believe we can reduce your outstanding balance by at least 60%, she said finally. I stared at her in disbelief. 60%? That would be over $30,000. Possibly more, Maria nodded. "And we can work out a reasonable payment plan for the remainder." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The next day at work, I ran into Jason from the legal department in the break room. "You look better," he observed. "Still exhausted, but less like you're about to collapse." I gave him a brief overview of my meeting with Maria. "That's excellent," he said. "But what about the credit card debt?" "The interest rate is criminal. One problem at a time," I sighed. "Right now I'm focused on Mom's medical bills." Jason tapped his coffee mug thoughtfully. "I might be able to help with the credit card situation. I used to work in consumer protection law. Let me look at some options." True to his word, Jason helped me draft hardship letters to the credit card company, citing predatory lending practices and requesting interest rate reduction. He explained provisions in the Card Act that I could leverage and help me understand my rights as a consumer. "They're counting on you not knowing this stuff," he explained. "Knowledge is power, especially when dealing with financial institutions." Over the following weeks, a patchwork of solutions began to emerge. The hospital approved Mom for their charity care program, reducing her outstanding balance by 70%. The credit card company, after multiple calls and letters, agreed to a hardship program that lowered the interest rate from 24.99% to 8% and created a payment plan I could actually manage. Jason introduced me to a nonprofit credit counseling service that helped me create a sustainable budget and negotiate with my landlord. While they couldn't prevent the rent increase entirely, they helped me secure a longer lease term that spread the increase over 18 months rather than hitting all at once. Most importantly, Mom's new treatment protocol was showing positive results. The infection had been a setback, but Dr. Thompson was cautiously optimistic about her prognosis. "Your mother is a fighter," she told me during a follow-up appointment, "and I suspect she gets it from you." 3 weeks after our confrontation, I received a text from Rachel. "How is Mom?" I stared at those 3 words for a long time before responding with the simple truth: "Improving. Her new treatment is working well." "Good. That's good." A pause, then, "Can I visit her?" I consulted Mom, who immediately brightened at the prospect. "Of course, tell her to come anytime." The reunion was awkward but less explosive than I'd feared. Rachel arrived alone, without the designer accessories that had once been her uniform. She looked different, more subdued, her makeup minimal, her clothing simple. "Trevor and I broke up," she volunteered after an uncomfortable silence while Mom was napping. "He wasn't who I thought he was." I nodded, unsure what response she was looking for. "I need a place to stay," Rachel continued, staring at her hands. "Just temporarily, until I find an apartment I can afford." The old Amber would have immediately offered my spare room, eager to fix everything, to be the responsible one, the fixer. The new Amber took a deep breath. "You can stay with Mom," I said evenly. "She'd love the company, and it would help me to have someone here when I can't be." "But Rachel, there need to be boundaries this time." Rachel nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "I understand. Do you?" "Because I can't go through this again." "Mom can't go through this again." I said I understand, Rachel snapped, a flash of her old self emerging before she visibly reined it in. "Sorry." "Yes, I understand. I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything fell apart. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not completely. The betrayal was still too raw, the consequences still too present in my daily struggle. But I remembered my promise to Mom to try. "We'll figure it out," I said finally. "One day at a time." 6 months later, Lev had found a new, imperfect equilibrium. Mom was responding well to treatment, her prognosis improving beyond Dr. Thompson's initial hopes. Rachel had found a job as an administrative assistant at a local marketing firm, ironically similar to my own position, and was slowly rebuilding her life without the shortcuts she'd tried to take before. Our relationship remained strained but civil, held together by our shared love for Mom rather than any genuine reconciliation. Perhaps that would come with time. Perhaps not. I was learning to accept that some things couldn't be fixed through sheer force of will, and that was okay. As for me, I'd been promoted at work partly due to Jason's recommendation and partly because I'd proven my resilience and dedication through the most challenging period of my life. The raise didn't solve all my financial problems, but combined with the various assistance programs and payment plans, it made the future seem manageable rather than insurmountable. The credit card debt still existed, but it no longer defined my existence or consumed my every waking thought. It was a mistake made from love, a burden I would carry for years to come, but no longer one that threatened to crush me. On a bright Sunday afternoon, Mom, Rachel and I sat in Mom's small backyard, enjoying a rare moment of peace together. The spring flowers were blooming, and Mom's color had improved enough that she almost looked like her old self. "My girls," she said, smiling as she looked between us. "My beautiful, strong girls." Rachel and I exchanged a glance, not quite friendly, not quite healed, but no longer filled with active hostility. Progress, however small. "The Three Musketeers," I said softly, echoing Mom's old phrase. Mom reached out, taking one of our hands in each of hers. "All for one," she began. "And one for all," Rachel and I finished together. That night, driving home alone, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The crushing debt, the betrayal, the despair, and ultimately, the slow climb toward resolution. I had nearly lost everything: my mother, my sister, my financial future, my sense of self. Yet somehow, I had found something invaluable along the way. Boundaries, self-respect, and the knowledge that I could survive even when everything fell apart. The hardest lesson had been learning that I couldn't fix everything through sacrifice and responsibility alone. Sometimes the heaviest debts we carry aren't financial at all, but the emotional cost of not valuing ourselves enough to expect better from those we love. I still had a long road ahead: years of careful financial management, a family healing in fits and starts, and the lingering shadows of betrayal that might never fully dissipate. But for the first time in a very long time, I was driving towards something rather than away from something, and that made all the difference. Have you ever made a huge financial sacrifice for someone you love? Did they appreciate it, or did you end up feeling taken advantage of? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to hear more stories like mine. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's the only way to truly help the people you love.